Today is March the 4th, 2023, and today we're here with Gabriel McHenry Herrera, who's running for place 2 on the Amarillo City Council. Gabriel, welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start by telling the voters who you are.
So I'm a long-term resident of Amarillo, born and raised here and since 94. Graduated from Tascos in 2012, went to Amarillo College and then West Texas A&M and graduated with my bachelor's in business marketing in 2018. I've worked many jobs since then, and since high school I was from being a server in restaurants such as Teddy Jack's to Dillard's and Target, and now currently at Amarillo National Bank as a commercial teller.
Very good. Very good. So what makes you want to run for Amarillo City Council?
So one of my main reasons for running for city council is I'm wanting to see more representation from the younger generation for the city, because as growing up, a lot of my friends would always move to other cities because they just didn't find what they were looking for here. And so I'm hoping to change that, make Amarillo a place where you can grow up and see your future here instead of just having to move to Dallas, New York, or Austin, those bigger cities. Make Amarillo the place that you want to stay.
So how do you plan on doing that?
So some of the things that I'm looking at doing is improving the infrastructure of a lot of our buildings, beautifying buildings such as the airport, one of the main entrances to Amarillo, so people get a good impression on their first approach. And so with the city hall being a new city hall that they've just broke ground on, continuing that and improving a lot of our buildings that tourists come and see. So like the airport, hospitals, schools, downtown, and continuing the events like Hoodoo, where they're adding murals to the buildings to give something to come and look at. And so continuing the tourist attraction and mimicking as well, like how Singapore, all their buildings, when you enter into Singapore, everything where people come and visit, it's just very approachable, very appealing to the eye.
So you want to beautify the buildings and make it more attractive for tourists?
Yes.
What about, what are let's just say the 4 top issues that you see the city council that faces? What do you think the top 4, what would your top 4 priorities be in relation to the city council, and what you think that the public thinks are those 4 issues?
So spending. So when it comes to how much they're spending on projects and how responsible they're being. So with the Civic Center, they're wanting to spend $300 million for just improving the capacity to 10,000 people from its current 7,000, I believe, is how many people it's about to have. Versus if I was going to spend that much, I'd want it to have a capacity about 15,000, copying more what Lubbock has with the United Arena for indoor capacity, to make that more appealing to people coming to Amarillo. If they wanted to have an event here, I'd rather have 15,000 people sitting down than 8. So you're doubling how many people can go to an event, bringing in better revenue source from that is one thing. So the spending and foresight is another. They're only wanting 10,000. We have 50,000 less than Lubbock, but we want to have an arena that's 2/3 the size. And that's not, in my opinion, for a city to grow, we have to plan more ahead than just supplying what we currently have. We need to be prepared to have the surplus of having people moving to Amarillo if we are to continue improving and growing, since we have been expanding. And that's another thing, the expansion. A lot of the city council's growth is south and southwest and not so much northeast. And, surrounding the airport, the same as DFW, the airport's dead center almost of the entire metroplex there, while ours is nearly out of town northeast, when we could have growth encompassing that entire area as well. So that would be the second. Let's see, two more. The other two, besides spending, transparency would be third. I feel like they're not as transparent with their planning and what they're conveying to the public and receiving from the public. They're not as friendly as they could be on how they receive information, since they have it where you have to fill out a form and you have to do it 15 minutes before a council meeting. And then also the fact that they limited how many meetings there are, compressing the information that can be shared. And so those would be the things: improving transparency, future planning, and then just communication with the public.
Very good. So you'd like to see expansion of city services out near and around the airport.
Yes.
So that would that means you would have to provide the sewer and the water and streets. And do you know if that area is within the city limits?
Don't believe it is. I believe it just goes, the city limits extend out to the airport and around it and then come back.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, because I don't, there's a subdivision out there where all the officers lived when that was the air base. That's why it's out of town, right? Because of all the nuclear bombs being loaded onto planes and whatnot there. But I think that I don't know if it's in the airport itself is in the city limits. I believe that you're right. I think that it is. But that's an interesting concept. So you would do that to help the city raise revenue rather than raise taxes.
Correct.
So you would be more inclined to want the city to do things that benefited the citizens through services rather than property taxes.
Correct. And especially benefit the citizens, because that is, taxes are essentially their money going to the services that are needed to be provided, such as police and fire, as well as sewer. And I do know that Amarillo, the airport is part, because they get 3% of our current taxes is spent on the airport as it is. So I did look into that. But speaking to some people, one of the other reasons why I want the airport improved is I've been told that the elevators are something to look at. So those are one of the reasons why the improvements I feel are kind of important.
Okay. So what made you decide to run? What was it? One thing that came up that said, I need to do that to serve my community.
So, just younger representation, somebody to speak for the younger generation, as well as seeing like what it's the future. My generation is going to be the one that's coming in after the next. And so all the decisions being made now are going to be being primarily paid for by the next generation. It's always, the moving along, how life is. And so I was just wanting to have a little say in how that's done.
Because you're going to have to pay for it.
Exactly. And so that's another reason why the financials, like, I'm not a big fan of being in debt. That's how I was just raised. It was like, if you can't afford it in 5 years, then it probably shouldn't be something that you do. Or if you don't have a plan to pay it off reasonably, that it just keeps compounding. That interest is what makes it where it can't get caught up on. And so that the spending is another crucial thing of how I've seen, like, Hodgetown was $44 million complex. And so when looking at things like that, I'm like, how long is it going to take us to pay? And those are some things that I found difficult to find that kind of information. And as they were mentioning with the Civic Center, they're saying that they're losing money on it for the maintenance and running of it, and because there's not enough events. And again, the pipes there break and bust. And so cost $1 million to fix and things like that. So another thing is just how things are operating and having those more, because like one of my issues with the Civic Center is the monopoly of the concessions. We don't allow more than, by my understanding, more than, one or two people running concessions there. So there's no competition and for allowing quality. I always think competition a lot brings quality into services. And that's visible with internet. Suddenlink used to be the only one that was in the area. AT&T comes in, and now we have, Optimum, and now, faster internet in a lot more areas because fiber comes in. And previously, Suddenlink wasn't doing any of those improvements until competition came in and pushed that. So,
now you have Vexus, AT&T, Amarillo Wireless.
mm-hmm.
You got all kinds of options now, and the price has dropped.
Oh yeah,
and the speed has went up exponentially.
Exactly, and that's one of the
competition
benefits.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. The other one of the things I hear people talk about is the animal control or the animal rescue center. I'm not sure what they call it. Anyway, we have a problem with a lot of stray animals. Have you heard anybody talking about that? And do you have any plan to resolve that issue?
So I've heard about a lot of the cats with the neutering, like the catch and release, and that's what they're currently doing with a lot of the cats is they're catching them, neutering them, and then just releasing them again, which is kind of beneficial. It's, I guess, the best middle ground. Then
keeps that cat from
making more,
having more,
and then you don't anger people with the whole upheaval with kill shelters, as some people would call them.
But you just threw him out there to die, right?
Cats are pretty.
Eventually.
Oh, eventually, yeah.
And wreaking havoc on the neighborhoods.
True. Which is, that's a good question. That's something I didn't think about. Right. Well,
I don't know. I just hear on people talking about, some people that's a big issue to them, and they had some issues at the on the city council agenda about their animal control problem. So I know that's going to be something that's probably going to come up eventually on how to manage these animals. The problem, of course, I'm a die-hard individualist and don't believe in regulating anything that's absolutely not necessary to. But I would think, to me, there's several things that should be regulated. If you live in town, and the reason is I own a lot of rental property, so we get to deal with these issues when people don't take care of their animals. The biggest problem I have is people's pets, right? Because they're not responsible. So somebody's not responsible. Either the neighbors or my tenants. Maybe we need to have a license to have a outside pet in town. And maybe that should be a revenue generating source for the city as opposed to property taxes. Just a thought that just occurred to me. But to me, some of the most important things that, you're dealing with the life of an animal. You want that animal taken care of properly. And the way to do that might be to force people into taking a course on taking care of that animal and paying a fee to have a license. And because it costs the city a lot of revenue because they have to run around and catch the ones that got loose and whatnot.
Or the ones that were just abandoned.
It's just a big problem. And because there's no real way to hold these pet owners accountable, maybe we need to look at some different ideas, you know. Of course, I think they ought to. I have to have a water license, sewer license, a real estate broker's license, several other licenses. Then I have to pay fees to even do business, right? But a politician doesn't, and a reporter doesn't. To me, those should both be licensed. So we can make sure that they understand that they're supposed to represent the voter.
Yes.
Not the other way around. And the media should represent accuracy rather than advocacy.
Yes.
But that's just, I'm just thinking out loud here what we could do to help solve some of these issues and get competency, whether you own a pet or you're running for office or you're a plumber. You know, to me, everybody ought to be treated the same.
Yeah. And talking about with the politicians needing to serve the people, that's another reason why I was running, because I always see businessmen who are running for the office and they're always saying, oh, I don't know what anybody else in my immediate family is doing. We're just doing this because it's best for the city. And then their family's still profiting from it because they're business people. They're selling property, buying, selling. I don't have any of those interests. I don't own, land. I don't buy, sell. I'm not in real estate. So I am just a Amarillo citizen whose interest is making Amarillo home.
Right.
And so, but that is one of the things that I did notice. I mean, they only get paid $10 a meeting, and they cut that in half. So I kind of agree on the politicians need to be known what their job is. It's not self-interest, it's service.
They're supposed to we live in a constitutional republic, a representative republic. So when we run for office, we represent our constituents.
Exactly.
In my case, I represent people who voted in the Republican primary. I don't represent the Democrats, although I think they think the same way. I think everybody pretty much wants the same thing. It's just, that's just the way the system's set up. We have two parties, and you need to work within one of them. And if you participate in the primary, that means you align yourself more with the platform of that party, and you can push that party in the direction that you want it by your participation. Even if it's just voting in the primary for all the primary candidates, you're choosing how to steer the party. You can become a delegate to the convention, a precinct chair, to be on my executive committee. You can come to your precinct convention, which will allow you to go to the county convention, which you can be elected as a delegate to the state party and have a huge impact then on the direction of the party. So if people just understood how the system worked, that's what I'm trying to do, is help, is educate people on that process, because I want all the people, I wish everybody would participate in whatever party they want. I want a strong Democrat Party because I know which it would be pushed in the more toward the center, and the same with the Republican Party, and that's how you get good people. When one party way dominates, then the weaker, I don't know if that's the right word, but people that aren't necessarily aligned with that party will come into that party because that's the only way they can have any effect. So they water down that party then. So to me, it would be better if everybody would participate. We have two strong parties, because I know we will always win because we're right. But we at least get to have a good debate, and we learn things from one another, and that's what it should be about. Because Democrats can have good ideas too. I spend most of my time fighting my own party because they don't want to change things. For the, you know, the world changes a little bit, and we need to look at different systems and different ways of doing things to make them more efficient. So, but you voted in the Republican primary,
I did.
so that's why we invited you because we want people that are willing to participate in the system, and then we love the fact. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to go down and file to run for office and to run a campaign. That shows courage and fortitude. So we commend you for that. And is there anything else you'd like to tell the voters about you and why they should choose you over your opponents?
So, other reasons. So, I did talk about the infrastructure. That was one of my big ones. The second was education. So, the League of Women Voters had asked me a question that brought up me to need to do some research on how many women get prenatal care at the hospital, and like what would I do in order to help with that? Should they have hire someone to help walk them through to get Medicaid or Medicare? And of the 30% that wouldn't get it, 40% of those was an attitudinal thing. They just didn't think they needed it. So even having somebody in the building to help them walk through to get that assistance, it wouldn't do anything because they don't think it's necessary. And so that just goes to educating and going back to, say, high school, having that in health class of talking about the benefits and the reason to get such care for, talking about on the women and educating them on saying, why it's important to get this and allowing them to still make their own decision and choice rather than hand-holding somebody who may not necessarily think it's important or necessary. And so talking about how, like, you were talking about freedoms, that's one of the reasons why I voted in the Republican primary. They're very strong, as your head over there has. 2A, I also have a license to carry. And so I'm a very big on, police do serve their purpose. I appreciate police officers a great deal. They are there to help protect. They help do the dangerous job of getting the criminals after they've done something. But when it comes to my own house, if somebody's breaking in, I want to have the right to defend myself. I want to defend myself when I not rely on calling somebody to come and assist. But there are some things that, politicians do serve that purpose of serving the people and helping get things that are needed. So that's another reason. So that's one thing that the voters, I'm hoping to be that ear to listen to everyone. Because I feel like a lot of the people that are, with the way the Amarillo is, of all 4 councilmen can be elected from the same neighborhood, I'd be a fan of having it where it's sectioned, where you have to live in that neighborhood, in that area, to be the councilman, to represent them, to give a better and fair more representation.
Single member neighborhoods or districts.
Yes.
That's what you'd be for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on that. The more I observe, the more I kind of like the idea. There's some complications to it because you have, you'd have to. It's not easy. To me, you'd be better off adding a couple councilmen and using the commissioner precincts, and then take the top 2 in Randall and then the ones in Potter, or just put. You might. The problem is the city limits, and it doesn't necessarily lap well with the elected positions, unless you use party precincts, which you could. Might be easier, but it's one of those things that sounds easy, but then how are you going to divide it up, and who's going to do that and keep up with that, and figure that's kind of a complex problem to divide that up
in an unbiased and fair way.
Well, you just do it by population, and to me, you treat everybody the same. I just disagree with everybody thinking that that people of different colors think different. They don't. They're all humans. We're all the same. So much of what's done today is to divide on purpose. Nobody cares what color somebody is. They just don't care. They don't care how old you are. As long as you're 18, they're not going to discriminate against you because you're 19 or 39 or 79. If you can do the job or hold your own, people don't care. But no, I think that's something that we haven't heard a lot about lately is the single member districts. And then the what was the other thing you wanted to talk about?
So, education, single member, infrastructure.
Oh, I know what. Yeah, we were talking about the League of Women Voters, and they said that wanted your opinion on the prenatal.
Yeah, prenatal
Why
care.
Why would that be a role the city council should be involved in?
I believe they would just on the having somebody at the hospital who would help sign people up for Medicare.
But why would that be the role of city government?
That I do not know. It was a question that they had in their questionnaire, and so I thought it was an interesting one.
Yeah, I think personally we have too much government. To me, those people that chose to have a child should be responsible enough and probably don't want the government telling them what to do. But that's, I don't know the context in which they necessarily ask it.
Might be able to probably look it up.
Unless they're trying to get, what is that, head agency? Families with WIC program, women with infant children. You know, they're always trying to get more people on a government benefit.
Yeah.
That's the goal. The more people they can get on government subsistence, that gives them more money and more power. So they're encouraged to do it. I think everybody should be independent. And no government. I want a society where very few, if any, need government assistance. To me, that should be our goal. We want people to improve themselves, get ahead, and
one of the reasons why I like Texas.
Yep. Not try to keep people down. And to me, that's the end result of a lot of these programs.
Well, I always thought it was interesting that there were programs that were made for a time period, and they were only supposed to be for that time period, yet they still persist to this day.
Now, 20 years later, they're still on it. That's a problem. I mean, we all want to help people that need help, but it should be short term to get them on their feet and let them fly on their own, not to keep them there, because that disincentivizes people. You know, I think that's why we have people don't see it, but why we have inflation, because people aren't producing near as much. They're paid not to work. And so you have money going into the economy with no production. That's what creates inflation. Simple. It's going to get worse because now they're raising rates, which is going to make inflation worse. You know, they credit Volcker for raising rates and killing inflation, but he didn't have anything to do with it. He was making it worse until Reagan came in and cut taxes and reduced regulation, and the economy took off and people started producing again, and that's what lowered inflation. But people just don't understand how the world works. It's much more complex system than what they want you to believe. But to me, you want to incentivize people to produce. We need to produce more than we consume, or eventually we end up in trouble.
Yep. Well, the whole thing about business is supply and demand.
That's
you don't
it.
have supply, demand goes up, prices go up.
There you go.
So, and then I just now remembered the other, oh my gosh, a lot of stuff's going on through my head right now.
Sure.
So talking about the production, that was another thing that I was wanting to continue in Amarillo. We brought in the Amazon warehouse. They've brought in the cheese factory. They're bringing in businesses. They're just not bringing a wide enough portfolio of businesses, in my opinion. And so what I'd want to try to bring in is, we like pushing education, saying Amarillo College, great college to go to, been there. WT's an amazing college, just 20 minutes south of us in Canyon. So we're big on educating the kids, but we're not providing jobs that necessarily require a college degree. And so that's one of the things that I'd want to try working on as well as in city council, is bringing in those college degree worthy jobs, bringing in a broader portfolio, bringing in tech and not just industry and transportation, since that's Amazon. So that was the other one.
Well, you'll have to have MBAs to run these businesses, right? I guess you wouldn't have to, but you could. But, yeah, it's hard to get started in that after the fact, because you have if you're looking at high tech, then they want to be where all the other high tech people are, because labor, right? So they can pull labor from other similar companies. So it's tough to get that first one, but if you could ever get one, then it will beget others. But it's going to be and you can have the people here to support that. Is it worth the competition? Or you could focus on things that nobody else can, which is agriculture. Like they've got the vet school here now. That was great. That's one thing they did. I think that was really good. You've got WT and Texas Tech here, and the nursing and the nursing and the pharmaceutical college. So I would think that you would focus, if you could focus more on like the pharmaceutical industry, which is a pretty clean industry, you could bring here with some high-paying technical jobs, and we have everything to support that, and we're well located. So with the vet schools, the pharmacy school, and the hospitals and the medical field, and we're kind of a medical hub for the whole area. So I would think that would be a business that would fit well here. I just don't understand why they don't really try to focus a little more on that. We have the illegal drug dealers. Let's get some legal ones.
And we do have a lot of open real estate in that area to continue expansion here.
Well, we're kind of unlimited on that.
That's true.
We've got plenty of space. Well, that's just my thought of the day. But I can see why we don't have. I guess what I'm saying is I understand why we don't have the high tech, because it's hard to compete with a place like Austin on that, because you're dealing with infrastructure, massive plants that are very sophisticated. I was down there when they built them, and it'll blow your mind what those cost 30 years ago. Applied materials and places like that. And then the workforce is, highly specially trained. So we don't have those people yet. Now, could we produce them? Sure. Well, do you have a website where people can go and find out more about you, or how would they do that?
So I have a Facebook page I'm working on that's just my name running for place 2. So Gabriel McHenry Herrera for City Council place 2. That's about the only one I have right now, but I'm still working on some things. I'm just trying to keep it as minimal on the campaigning finances side, just to keep it from needing to have people donate, essentially, so as I can truly say that I'm for the entire city of Amarillo instead of the people who gave me money. So,
Well, that's good. Well, we wish you luck, and I'm sure we'll see you at various events coming up, and good luck out there. And if we don't see you before then, we'll see you on May the 6th.
Yep.
And tell all your buddies to get registered to vote.
Oh, I already am.
And they can vote at our headquarters office over at, it's easy, they're at Western and I-40, 4217 Southwest 21st. And we're there from 10 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday. So if anybody needs to, they can go over there and register to vote. Are you going to have any yard signs or anything?
I will be making little flyers or pamphlets, but no yard signs.
Well, you're welcome to leave your materials at our headquarters office. So if anybody wants to swing by there and pick them up, we're opening it up to anybody that voted in the Republican primary in 22 can keep their materials at our headquarters office and use that.
All right. Well,
all right. Well, I appreciate you coming in, and good luck.
Thank you, Dan.
All right.